Hey there, welcome into this edition of Bills Take Two. I'm Jonathan Acosta, joined here by our WGRZ Bills insider, Vic Carucci. Vic, I know it's been a busy week in Bills land. I know one of the big news, not just here in Buffalo, but around the entire NFL and in the U.S. is the death of O.J. Simpson. I want to tell people that if they want to catch your conversation with our Claudine Ewing, where you break down O.J.'s legacy, they can catch that over on WGRZ.com. But for right here, we're going to discuss the draft because the draft is now in less than 2 weeks away, that first round coming up on that Thursday night. And I know we've had a lot of discussion about what the Bills may do in that first round, what Brandon Beane might be doing, whether he could be looking to trade up possibly into the top 10 to get one of those stud receivers. But let's discuss kind of the flip side of that coin. Is there maybe a potential benefit to standing pat or trading down specifically? And if there is, what would be that benefit for Beane trading down, maybe adding a few picks, because the Bills only have 2 selections within the top 100?
I think the obvious benefit for the Bills is accumulating more picks in a draft where they need to hit and hit well with players who can either start or contribute immediately. This is a team that needs, I think, all the young help it can get, cap-friendly rookie contracts, and it's multiple positions. It's not just wide receiver, which is considered obviously the biggest need they have when they've said goodbye to the numbers 1 and 2 receivers on their team from the previous season. But you look at the cornerback position, you look at edge rusher, all these spots, and the fact that they don't have a third-round draft pick right now. So I would think that as much as possible, as if they can stock picks up, again, move down to target a player, say in the second round, move down and then add that pick, and then maybe wheel their way back up from there or wheel their way into the third round.
Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft actually has the Bills staying at 28. If the board falls like this, I'm sure Bills Mafia would be super excited. He hasn't taken Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I know a lot of people have had him going top 20, more like in the 15 to 17 range. So if he's there at 28 for the Bills, that would be huge for them. Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, other receivers reportedly visiting the Bills for top 30 visits. When you hear those names and as you've studied this group of receivers, what are some of the qualities and characteristics that you think the Bills should be targeting for their first receiver off the board, especially in the wake of the Stephon Diggs trade?
Yeah, well, first of all, if a Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU can find his way to the Bills, I think that would be a huge get. If they could stay right at 28 and select him, you're getting the guy, first of all, who gives them the vertical threat that they need, gives them some size, gives them the ability to make plays on the perimeter, on the sideline, and high point the ball, all the things that you want. I think that's a quality you're going to look for in a player that, if he isn't right away your number 1 guy, he's certainly good enough to be your number 2 guy. And say you decide that you go with Curtis Samuel, the veteran, in that number 1 role as a bridge guy or a placeholder until the rookie is ready to play. And then, look at a Troy Franklin. I really like this guy because he is a guy that is so smooth, silky smooth with his route running. The scouts love that. And he's a name that gets lost just because of the star power when you hear Marvin Harrison Jr., when you hear Malik Neighbors, when you hear Rome Odunze. Those names dominate, and they're the ones that register at the top and in blinking lights. But a guy like Troy Franklin, again, if he's falling to you, you just grab him because he can make an impact. He can help you right away.
I used to work in Oregon, so I watched plenty of Ducks football this fall. He was dynamic in that offense with Bo Nix. I know a lot of people were watching the Pac-12 because they're on late at night, but that was a dynamic offense, and both of them had incredible seasons. So I think Franklin could definitely be a burner for the Bills. Outside of the draft, we'll get back to the draft in a sec, because there's also the avenue of, do the Bills maybe add one more veteran free agent? There's guys still on the board like Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Gallup. Could you see the Bills possibly going down one of those routes in addition to picking up a receiver in the draft?
It wouldn't surprise me in the least if Brandon Beane does a late free agent signing, much like he did last year in June when he ends up bringing in Leonard Floyd, a difference maker in their pass rush, really the best pass rusher they had. And of course, they lost him to free agency after his one-year contract to San Francisco. And now you look at June and how important it is in terms of the cap, because that is when the Tre'Davious White release takes effect as a cap benefit of $10 million or so. It's not necessarily enough money in and of itself to make the biggest splash deal, but by that point, if you have receivers available to be signed or acquired in some way, shape, or form, that to me is more of a bargain hunting way, and you're likely to end up with a player doing what Leonard Floyd did. Take the one-year contract. It's affordable for the Bills. It's not the best deal that the player will see, but he gets the opportunity, that player, to, in 1 year, enhance his stock the way Leonard Floyd did.
Now, the Bills have double-digit draft picks. There's a few positions of need that are obvious, like wide receiver, safety, edge. But they have, again, double-digit draft picks, so they're going to pick at positions other than just those three. When you look at the board and the Bills' needs and their roster right now and their depth chart, what are maybe one or two positions that you could see the Bills addressing outside of those three obvious ones?
Yeah, I think it would be important to not forget, even though they've made some moves on their offensive line, not to forget that that's a spot that has to have sufficient depth, have people churning their way through. Even if they don't start, you want those promising younger players coming up the ranks. You got to look at linebacker. You can't assume just because a Matt Milano is expected to return from the major knee injury he suffered, that A, you're going to have the same Matt Milano you had before the injury, and B, that you're going to have him for a full season. And when exactly are you getting him? When is he fully cleared to play? The Bills have been vague about that so far, and I think they're waiting to see how the offseason unfolds. So linebacker is an important area to address. And again, safety, not the draft that necessarily produces many top-end players there. And I think that's why it's not seen as a place where the Bills are going to really make it a major point of pursuit. But they're going to have their eye open for it. Running back, I don't think, even though they're I think, reasonably well-stocked and will probably do a committee approach there, I think the feeling will be to probably add one of those guys somewhere down the line, and keeping in mind that all the positions that they would be looking to address that are speed positions, or again, like linebacker, where you're a little bigger, but you're also more mobile, even if it's edge rusher, defensive end, these are younger players that can factor in on special teams. And I think the underappreciated element of drafting for all teams, including the Bills, will be the right kind of athletes that fit the new rules for kickoff. And by that, I mean you have to have cover people who are fast enough to be in pursuit, because the breakaway points are earlier in the return, right, with those players lining up on the return team's 40-yard line. So you can't have a lot of big, slow guys, because once that player gets past the first level, he could be gone, that speedy receiver. And then flipping it over to block for those players, you want to have some of those bigger, mobile, but I think sturdier players who can give that little crease, whatever it takes, to get one of those return guys, because I think most teams will have two guys back there in that return area and on kickoffs to just give them that little bit of window they need to take off.
I'm with you there, especially with linebacker and them losing Tyrell Dodson in the offseason, and he certainly played some quality football for them down the stretch. Each team, each front office has its strategies, its characteristics that they look for in players, where even sometimes in a particular draft you're in the third round and you say, oh, this is a Buffalo Bills player, or oh, this is a Baltimore Ravens or New England Patriots type of player. When you look at Brandon Beane and the drafts since he's been here in Buffalo and you analyze them, what kind of clues do those leave as to what his strategy may be in this year's draft?
Yeah, I think with the Bills, there is a definitive profile. It starts with Sean McDermott's view of a player. Team-oriented, team first. Brandon Beane wants this too, but it's very much the guy who is selfless as much as he can be. There are egos in this game. These are pro athletes. These are performers. But the Bills player has to first recognize that he's part of that whole 1/11th concept. And that isn't just words they speak or a cliche. It's something that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott fully believe. It's preached constantly in the meeting room, in the facility, and the core of players that are aboard see it that way for the most part. And they too would spread that kind of feeling and thinking. But it has to start with the type of player you bring in. And there are bad fits from personality. If a guy comes in and he's mostly about himself and about his own numbers and his own, whatever it is, his own accomplishment, that's not the best fit. Now, you have to have talent first and foremost. Sometimes you will sacrifice that. Sometimes you will have the players that aren't necessarily the best fits. The Bills just went through this with Stefon Diggs to the point where the two sides could not get along any longer, even though Stefon Diggs probably should have at least had one more year in Buffalo to help their cap situation. And then if you part ways, do it after this year. But it became so untenable, they had to move on from each other. And I think in drafting, the same kind of thinking is there. You may sacrifice some of those team-oriented feelings for a player who's exceptionally talented, but it doesn't happen very often. And when the Bills sit down with these guys, whether it's at the Senior Bowl, when they have opportunities to talk with them there, the Combine, when they have those 18-minute sessions there, the visits that they have at their own facility with players, they get up to 30 of those pre-draft. That's when they can really get to know them, and they do the analysis beyond just what is done in a football realm. They observe how these players, from the moment they land, for instance, coming in for a visit, from the moment they're at the airport and they're met by a team official who picks them up and is driving them to One Bills Drive, how that ride goes. They'll do a debriefing of the driver and ask him, how was the guy, how did he treat you? What was the interaction like? When he gets to the facility, others that he meets along the way, whether it's in the training staff, the athletic training staff, the cafeteria staff, anyone around the front office, the receptionist, whoever it might be, what are the encounters like? What is the personality of the player like? Now, this isn't a definitive read, but it gives you a sense of what kind of human being you might be bringing aboard.
Great stuff there, Vic, and certainly the anticipation grows for the draft. Like we said before, less than 2 weeks now before that first round. The next time we talk will be the last time we talk before that first round of the NFL draft. Look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks for joining us, Vic.
All right, Jonathan.